There you go. Hi everyone, we're just going to give it one more minute to let everyone come through and then we'll get started in just a minute. Okay, I think we should just get started now and see how we go. Well, good evening everyone and welcome to the final event of the Barnes Film Festival 2020. It's been an amazing event with plenty on and so many great events, including this one. And today we are absolutely delighted to welcome Mr. David Wood, OBE, to the Barnes Film Festival. Thanks so much for joining us, David.
Thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
I know it's all online now, so it's all a bit different. Usually we'd be somewhere in Barnes doing this, but unfortunately due to circumstances, we'll have to do it online. Malcolm McDowell is due to join us at some point. He may pop in, he may not, I believe. Oh,
there he is.
Wow, right on time. Hold on, we're just connecting. Here Malcolm.
How are you?
Hello.
How are, we were just saying we weren't sure if you're going to join us today. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Really good. I've been watching the Manchester City game, Chelsea, which makes my team champions if City lose or draw.
Oh, wow.
And they're still losing right now. Huh? I can say with 5 minutes to go, Liverpool in all 99.9% champions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so it's a big night. It's a big night for Barnes Film Festival. It's a big night for Liverpool.
Yes,
great news.
It is.
Well, thank you. Anyway. Thank you so much for joining us today. And
absolutely,
where are you joining us from today?
I'm in California, Southern California, near Santa Barbara.
Amazing, great. Well, and also we have our audience who are joined live at the moment. Thank you all for joining us on the hottest day of the year here in the UK. I hope everyone's somewhere cool. My name's Fred and I'll be hosting today's Q&A focusing on Lindsay Anderson's 1968 film If, which is just screened on the Barnes Film Festival Hub. So hopefully you all got a chance to see it. And of course this is a Q&A, so please do send in all of your questions and we'll get as many answered as possible. So if you look at the bottom of your screens, there's a Q&A function. And if you just click on that, you can get your questions in and I will get to them as we go through the session. But first, David and Malcolm, welcome. David, you're, I believe, in Wimbledon. Is that right?
I'm in Wimbledon.
So you're just a stone's throw from Barnes. And of course, Malcolm, you're in sunny California.
Yes, yes.
My first question for you both is, when was the last time you saw each other?
Oh, well, it wasn't that long ago. I suppose it was about 18 months ago. And Malcolm was over.
No.
Was it?
No. It was in the autumn, in the fall, because I was in England.
That's right, doing the Clockwork Orange.
No. What, didn't I see you, though, when I was staying at the Garrick doing this TV thing for Amazon?
No, I think we missed each other then.
We didn't? Okay. Well, I am old, you know, David. You're getting
We're the same age, Malcolm. We're the same age.
Oh, my God, you're old, David. Well, your memory's better than mine. Okay, then I must have been over for Clockwork Orange or something. Yeah,
we had a very nice cream tea after you did a Q&A at the Curzon Mayfair.
I thought it was the Dorchester, but I could be wrong.
Well, the tea was. Yes, the tea was at the Dorchester, but
yes.
the cinema.
Oh, yeah. The cinema, okay.
Mayfair. Yes.
Yeah,
no, we
okay.
haven't changed at all, you know.
Not really.
And so
no.
Let's jump back to the beginning of things. So at the beginning of If, when you both auditioned for If, at what stage of your lives were you both at? So David, if you want to start on that one.
I'd left university and I'd gone into rep. I was at the Swan Theatre, Worcester, and I was in a play and I used to write letters to everybody, all the casting people and so on. And this thing came through, would I come up to audition for something called Crusaders, which was a film directed by Lindsay Anderson. So I was allowed off, and I came up on the early train, and it was the Garrick Theatre, and a lot of us were there, and we all read scenes, and I was about to go after the first one, and they said, would I stay on? And I thought, well, all right. They said, your train doesn't go back yet, does it? So, no. So I ended up staying there for about 2 hours, reading with all sorts of people and reading all sorts of parts. And Lindsay came and spoke to me and asked me what he meant by the word epic. And I floundered around and talked a little bit about an epic poem, I seem to remember. Anyway, that was it really. And later on I heard that I'd got a part, but I didn't know what the part was. I think Malcolm, probably you were already cast by then, weren't you?
I don't know, to be honest. I know that they had somebody else in the part of Mick Travis. They were 98% sure. And I wandered in from, I was working at the Royal Court. I was a bit further on with my career than you, because I was already, I'd been to Stratford and all that. So I was now working at the Royal Court Theatre. We were doing a modern dress version of Twelfth Night, and I was playing Sebastian. Not the greatest of parts, but not bad. And I was thrilled to be at the Royal Court. And I went to meet with Lindsay Anderson and do a little audition. And he asked me what I was doing. I said, you know, modern dress version of Twelfth Night. And his response was, oh, how awful. And I went, well, not really. I mean, I was so thrilled to be working in the Royal Court, you know. So anyway, we went on. He said, who's directing? I told him, and who's in it? Blah, blah, blah. And of course, then he started to slag off everybody at the Royal Court. And of course, being a bit of a gossip myself, I joined in and was saying, yes, well, you're right. It is pretentious. It's actually a load of crap. I mean, I'm still waiting for my instructions of where to make my exits. They tell me where to come on, but nobody's telling me where the hell to go off. And he said, how typical. And I went, oh, yeah, it's just typical of the Royal Court thing. And then there was a sort of an impasse, and he said, of course, you do realize I am a director of the Royal Court.
Oh, wow.
Big pause. And it was, oh, well, I suppose I won't be getting this part then. He just said, not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it all started for me.
What drew you both to this project then? Was there anything that attracted you to the plot or to the crew or the cast?
Wait a minute. I think you really should say the other way around.
Yes.
We would have been attracted to a Hammer horror film.
Yeah, anything, I mean, anything.
I hear a shout. That means my kids. That means Liverpool did make it. So good. I'm thrilled with that.
Oh,
anyway,
amazing. There you go.
Yes, I'm so happy. So, you know, listen, we were very young actors. And by the time we'd learnt who Lindsay Anderson was, one of the most esteemed, brilliant directors working in Europe, if not anywhere in cinema. And in fact, he was a brilliant stage director, which he's mainly known for. He was certainly known for, but he directed This Sporting Life, which was with Richard Harris, which was a absolute seminal film of its time, one of the great films, you know. And of course, I hadn't seen it when I went to meet him. I hadn't got a clue who he was, but you know, by the time we finished the movie, believe you me, we knew everything about Lindsay Anderson's career because it was our duty to find out. And I remember him saying to me, if you're going to be in this business, Malcolm, you better start learning about who's who and what's what.
Oh, wow.
And of course he was right, but he loved to ask you questions in public at a dinner or something. And then when you got him stumbled, he'd, of course, ream you out, you know, which was a game for him. It was actually quite fun. You know, I remember him saying to me once, who is Jean Arthur? And I went, I know Jean Arthur. Of course I know who he is. And he went, it's a woman. I went, oh, is it? Oh, well, no, I don't know who it is.
Well, yes, I think he tried to educate us a bit. Certainly, when we started filming in Cheltenham, and the rushes used to be held in the Odeon, Cheltenham, after everybody had left, having seen the film, and we were taken in, and we sat in the circle while they were down below, the big boys. But one day he said on the floor, he said, "My films never date, apart from the odd skirt length. I'll prove it," he said. "You'll all come and see This Sporting Life," which Malcolm just mentioned, at the Odeon, Cheltenham, tomorrow night at about 11 o'clock. So we all went. We were filming the next morning at 7 or 8, but it didn't matter. We went to see it.
Right.
And I mean,
brilliant.
It was extraordinary. I mean, it was brilliant.
I know. And yeah, it's funny. I got to talk to Richard about it years later, but of course he behaved very badly on it. But you know, it was also starring Rachel Roberts, who was a really fine actress and a wonderful woman, a wonderful person. I remember asking Lindsay about Rachel, and he said, "Oh, well, you know, she's Welsh. The English don't know what to do with all that emotion." And I went, "Oh, that's what it's about." He said, "Oh, yes. No, those Southern English, cool, rather, you know, I can't remember the words he used, but anyway, he was also," and I went, "What are you talking about? You're English." He goes, "Actually, I'm a Scot." I went, "A Scot? You've never even been to Scotland." He goes, "Oh, yes, I have actually, Malcolm, yes." So I used to tease him a lot, but it was always fun being in the presence of Lindsay Anderson, I'll tell you. It was one of the great treats of the friendship with him. He was an extraordinary man, and we loved him dearly. Actually, I think about him a lot even now. He's been gone 30 years or something.
And can you both remember your first encounter with Lindsay?
Well, mine was the audition. And then I think after I'd got the part and Malcolm had got the part and the lovely Richard Warwick, who we missed tremendously, who was the third Crusader, as it were, we were invited to lunch. I don't know whether it was a Chinese lunch in Soho or something. And I was at a disadvantage because everybody was talking very knowledgeably. And I wasn't, because I hadn't been sent a script. But I think they thought I had, and I was too embarrassed not to say anything. So I phoned up my agent when I got back to Worcester. I said, "They're all talking about, they're all asking me to get pictures for my study, and I don't know what they're talking about." And eventually the script arrived, and of course I did realise that I'd got, you know, rather a nice part, which I hadn't realised that before. Because another thing he did to me was ask me to go back up again for another audition, and I was rehearsing Little Malcolm and his struggle against the eunuchs, I think, and there are only 5 in that. We only had 2 weeks rehearsal, so they said, "No, you can't go." So I somehow managed to get Lindsay's home number, how I don't know, and rang him and said, "Oh, you know, I'm really interested." And he said, "No, it's all right, it's all right." And then the next weekend they said, would I go up on a Sunday to a small viewing studio, I think it was, almost in Soho, to model the uniform, the school uniform. And I thought, well, it's very odd. Why can't they get someone from London? You know, why do I have to go all the way from Worcester? Not realizing at all that this was a sort of screen test. So I put the uniform on and stood in front of the camera. And Lindsay started saying things like, "Oh, why don't you," it's very boring, this, he said, "so why don't you just look at the camera as though you hate it? And then why didn't you do so and so?" And that was my screen test.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, you did better than I did, because I don't think I had a screen test, but I did.
You were in before me.
I had a rather memorable last audition with Christine Noonan. And again, I went in and, you know, Lindsay said, "So have you looked at the scene?" And I went, "What scene?" He said, "The scene we're going to do." I said, "No, I haven't got a script. I haven't even seen a script." And of course he went, "Oh, for God's sake, David, give him your script," you know, so, well, I got the script. I to be honest with you, Christy Noonan caught my eye at the same time, and I was rather distracted by the beauty of this girl. And so, and you know, a few minutes before you're doing a scene, what could I do? I couldn't even read it, really. It sort of went in through my eyes, into my head, and straight out my ears. You know, there was nothing that really I could do about it. But so we got to start on the thing, and it was the cafe scene, which David was a part of, memorably at the time. But anyway, it said in the directions that Mick grabs hold of the girl, and kisses her passionately, which I was very thrilled to do, considering I thought she was such a beautiful girl anyway. But I didn't read the next line, which was, girl viciously slaps Mick, you know, on the face. And the next thing I realized that I literally hit the deck of the stage, and she had actually hit me with a punch that reared up from the way at the back of her, and she hit me so hard that I started tearing.
Oh, wow.
And of the shock, I think, and the humiliation of finding myself completely out of it on the thing with the script gone. I don't know. And I just prowled around the stage after. I was so furious. And it was obvious that there were a lot of a lot of great energy in that. And so they, that's what got me into movies, is Christy Noonan's punch.
Mm. Wow. And then obviously, you know, the film is about 3 rebel public school boys, both yourselves and Richard Warwick. How do you remember you 3 coming together? How did you build your relationships and friendships on set?
Well, the clever thing was that Lindsay worked it out that to begin with, we would film in scenes in which we didn't speak, in which we were probably not even seen. So when the CCF march happened, we were in our uniforms, we were marching along, but you don't see us individually. But the idea of this for the first few days was that we would simply, I suppose, get to know each other and to hopefully bond. Meanwhile, the whips, the prefects, they'd been put up in a different guest house from us. And Lindsay had said, I want to keep this feeling of, we don't want you to get to know them too much, so you mustn't go and visit them. And of course, Malcolm said straight away, let's go around and have a drink with them, which we did on the first night. And we got on very, very well with them. But we didn't dare tell Lindsay that we'd done that. But it meant that gradually, I suppose, we got into character but with each other and learning, because, I mean, I hadn't done a film before. You know, so just to watch and observe and learn was the pattern for the first few days.
Well, I remember my first remembrance, or the first scene I shot was the rugby match on the school field in Cheltenham, which David's right, I had nothing to do with it except be a spectator. Richard actually was the linesman, I think. And actually, thinking back, it was very good casting, man. And Richard was the sort of the sweet one, the kind of very vulnerable one, if you like. Such a nice guy, you know, really lovely man. I really, I always feel a little bit guilty. I don't know whether I told you this, David, but Richard was up for a cliff in Look Back in Anger in New York when I did my Jimmy Porter. And, you know, I was saying, look, if you can get Richard, God almighty, don't even think twice, get Richard. And the director just thought he wanted him to be a lot younger. So unfortunately, I didn't get to work with him on stage 20 years later. Well, no, not 20 years, 11 or 12 years later. And I would have loved that because, you know, we were good friends, not great friends, but I mean, always gave each other a big hug when we saw each other. And it was a bit like you and I, you know, we don't often see each other, but when we do, it's sort of like time has disappeared and we just carry on from where we left off, you know. That's a real good friendship.
Yeah.
And you know, when you do something like a sort of If movie, which, you know, you only do one of those in a career. I mean, it's such an extraordinary film, really, and means so much to, I think, you know, the British particularly. Even though the film is very well thought of in America, they always screen it at colleges and film schools and all that. But I think it's Lindsay's real masterpiece, really. I mean, and of many. But yeah.
And moving on to the film If and its plot, we actually have a question come in here from Patrick O'Neill. He says, "Hi, David and Malcolm. David, it's Paddy O'Neill here from Kingston University. We did a Q&A about 18 months ago. My question is that how aware were you both of were both of you of the ideological implications of the era in relation to If, youth rebellion, anti-Vietnam War protests, Paris riots, etc. And did Lindsay Anderson mention this during filming?"
Well, I have to be honest and say that to begin with, I wasn't particularly aware. You know, we were doing a job. We were acting in a public school film or whatever. But what was undoubtedly true was that one day we came in and Lindsay was brandishing, I think it was a Daily Telegraph, and it had all the news of the Paris student riots. And he was very excited by this, the reason being that it was almost as though he was being prophetic and had put his finger on the pulse, as it were. And I think there was also probably a slight feeling that, well, he hoped anyway, that people wouldn't think that he had been inspired to make If because of the Paris riots. You know, I think he would have quite liked the film to have come out a little bit earlier than it did. But undoubtedly, one did see parallels, I suppose. Do you think that's right, Malcolm?
Yes, I remember that day. We were actually shooting the shooting of you know, the parents on the rooftop, and he was thrilled because it made it very timely and poignant. But you know, I was very aware that I was playing an anti-establishment character who had a loathing for these whips, prefects, whatever you want to call them, the establishment of the school, and yet, you know, Mick, as a sort of, as Lindsay explained, it was a pure revolutionary, so that he didn't hate everybody, all the masters, and it wasn't a blanket thing, but it was definitely a time, of course, of great rebellion in England and in Europe and in America. Of course, anti-Vietnam, the Aldermaston marches, and the gay pride, you name it, and we were marching. And so it seemed to me to be a sort of a natural kind of thing. And I guess we were all cast rather well, you know, because that was Lindsay's way. And as he said to me many times, casting is 90%. 90%. Because he was casting a play at the court. And I went away to do a movie. I came back and he was still trying to cast the same part. And I was going, haven't you cast that damn thing yet? What the hell? He goes, it's 90%. I can't make a mistake. He's right, of course. On a film, at least you can redo it, I suppose. But on stage, you're stuck.
Well, he did a wonderful thing for me quite early on. Well, I suppose we've been going a week or 10 days or more. And we'd begun to do a few scenes, and he came up to me and he said, "What's the matter with you? Why are you going around with that long face? It's so, you know, it's a very, very silly. What's the matter with you?" And I said, "Well," I said, "to be honest," I said, I never know whether I'm doing exactly what you want." And I said, at the end of a take, it was true. He never said, well done. He never said, thank you. He would just say, on, and you'd go on to the next shot. And so I said, I never know quite whether I'm getting it right, you know. And he looked at me and very angrily said, I took 6 months to cast this film. Mm-hmm. Walked away. And that was the most wonderful thing he could have said, because from then on, it didn't matter. I thought, well, he wants me to do it. He'll tell me if I'm not doing something he doesn't like, whatever, you know. But it's okay. Always remember that.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you were casting in your characters. Was there anything that you both liked about your characters or disliked about the characters that you were playing?
Well, you know, Mick Travis was of course, a great rebellious, and the young people, of course, really did identify with that a lot. And in fact, it used to embarrass me a bit because, of course, they used to think I was Mick Travis. And even though I, you know, had certainly rebellious streaks, I wouldn't go to say that I was really like him, but listen, I was thrilled because, of course, it led to Kubrick seeing the film and me being cast in Clockwork Orange, and then, you know, went on and to do 135 films or whatever it is. So, you know, but it was Lindsay and his, you know, his knack of casting and knowing really what was going to work, and of course, you know, as David says, it was our first film. We were greenhorns. We didn't know anything, but I'd done some television, so I knew something about lenses, cameras, to be still, stuff like that. Fairly basic, elementary things, and not too, you know. I remember the first thing we shot was a sword fencing scene in a squash court, and when I saw it the next day or 2 days later, whatever it was, I was horrified that my tongue was hanging out of my mouth because I was so concentrated on getting these strokes, you know. And I begged him to reshoot, and he said, "That's a very good lesson for you, Malcolm, to learn, is that at all times you've got to be in control of your facial muscles at all times." And I went, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that. But can we, in the meantime, can we reshoot this?" And he went, "Certainly not. We don't have the budget for that. But I'll make sure I don't use any shots with your tongue hanging out."
No, I think in answer to your question, I think I always sensed that my character was the slightly more sensitive one, the follower, certainly not the leader. And there were one or two lines which were clues. There was the one where I had to say about my mother dying of cancer. My mother took 3 months or whatever, and that I thought was a key. And then the moment when it took over in a way, because Lindsay knew exactly what he wanted, and you didn't improvise. But when we were in the cafe and Malcolm was doing all his stuff over at the jukebox and doing the tiger sequence with Christine, and I was back at the table, and I just thought that I wanted to put the saucer on top of Malcolm's coffee. And I did it, and Lindsay said, "What are you doing that for?" I said, "Well, it might get cold because he's doing things."
Because it could be quite a while.
and he said, "Okay, keep that in." And a number of people have said that they remember that little moment, which is very nice and very rewarding. But no, I sort of identified with him, although I'd never been to a public school. You had, Malcolm, hadn't you? But I hadn't been.
Well, as Lindsay said, yes, a minor one. but I knew those feelings so well, so I didn't really have to do much acting. Mm. But you know, when it's your first film, it's the purest performance you'll ever give, because you're untainted by other stuff that you've learned, technique that we call it. So you don't know technique when you first start. You're kind of just doing it on feel, you know, on emotion. And that's, of course, makes it a pure performance. And it was what a movie to start, for all of us. I mean, amazing, really. I was walking down the King's Road, and I'd met Albert Finney's girlfriend, which was a Nuke MA. I think I've told you this before. And she stopped me in the King's Road and said, "Malcolm, I've seen the film. It's a fantastic. What an entrance for you into world movies, to be with the scarf, and you pull the scarf and your hat, and there's this moustache." And of course, I never even thought of it that way, but of course it was an amazing entrance, and it was a great part. And it just shows you don't need to be on the screen all the time. In fact, better not.
And sorry, I was just going to say, you were both relatively starting out in your careers. Were there did you find there was any challenges when filming this? Were there things you felt, oh wow, it's quite tough? Or
oh God, yes. The riding the motorbike was quite frightening, although I have to say,
oh come on,
well, you were terribly kind.
Great
really.
Work,
you didn't know how to drive the
I thought I drove it extremely well.
You did, but there's a lovely moment, which is actually, you can just about see it in the film, where Malcolm sort of turns his head round to me, and he sort of says, you're all right back there. Yes, I had the Isadora Duncan scarf on, which wasn't too much fun. I kept on imagining that was going to get caught up in the wheel. But no, that was that. And the shower sequence wasn't a barrel of laughs, was it really? But no, it was an extraordinary experience. And I think...
Well, I had the beating scene, and
well, God, yes,
where I
absolutely.
was thrash, but I did have a pad, but I could still feel it. That... What was his name? Robert Swan. Robert's a lovely man.
He was rather good at it, wasn't he?
God, he was good. I went, you have a curl in your lip, like such a contempt. Do you really feel that? He said, only for your character. He was a
lovely man.
What a brilliant performance, by the way, from him.
Absolutely.
They were all good. Denson was another great one.
Yeah.
And of course, all the masters, Arthur Lowe, Graham Crowden, brilliant. Peter Jeffries as the headmaster, absolutely fantastic. And Mona Washbourne and Mary McLeod. Now, the sad thing is, David, I think we're amongst only a few that are actually still here. So
yeah, that's true. Even Ben Arris, who played the junior master, he left us a few years ago. And
I worked with his son.
Yeah, right, Jonathan.
Scotland.
Yeah. But no, it was terrible when because we lost Richard and we lost Christine, both far, far too young. And I mean, they were of our generation. But Robert Swan as well.
Richard unfortunately got the thin end of the wedge with the AIDS thing, and he died when he was very young. How old was he? 43?
Yeah, no, I don't think he got to 50.
No, he hadn't.
No.
And Christine was much older than that, but still too young. Way too young. Hey, amazing that we're still going strong.
And here you are talking about it. We've actually got another question from Emily Radford. Emily, thank you so much for your question. She says, hi, David and Malcolm. I only watched If for the first time this week. What was your favourite and least favourite scenes to film, and what are some of your best memories on set?
Oh dear. I really did rather enjoy our fight in Cheltenham High Street, our sort of mock fight. There was a huge crowd of people the other side of the road watching behind the camera. And as Malcolm was really going for me, and this was typical Malcolm really, he was really going for me, and there was a screech of brakes, and this lorry drew up, and this man got out wielding a hammer, and he came up and he said, "What are you doing to this poor man?" or something. And Malcolm, without any thought that it was a filmer, he said, "Well, he started it. He started it." The assistant.
He thought I was killing him,
over.
So he walloped me with the hammer.
Yeah. So that was quite fun. And also, we were filming that the first time I rolled over on the pavement my trousers split completely from the crotch down to the knee. And in fact, if you look, there's a fraction of a second, or maybe 1 second, because although we did it with gaffer tape and everything for the other takes, that was the one they used. So you can see a great.
It's all those bacon sandwiches, David.
Sandwiches?
Too many of those bacon sandwiches.
Well,
oh, yes.
I have to admit that I can sometimes look and see a picture of myself early in the film and think that I look considerably larger than later in the film. And that
well, it was free food. We'd never had that before.
Fantastic, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And several times a day, you had breakfast, and then you had 11s, and then you had lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And tea.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Oh,
You're taking care of them.
After.
Yeah, yeah.
And Malcolm, did you have any scenes that were your favourite to film?
I have quite a few, I think, but I suppose the cafe scene with Christine and the tiger stuff and all that's a very powerful imagery, amazing. It's very powerful imagery in terms of what was happening in the world, you know, so and all that really I didn't understand it quite at the time. I just thought it was sort of kind of had sexual undertones and all that, but that I liked very much. And then I think the beating scene is well, when we finished shooting it, Lindsay said, whatever happens to the film, we can always say, Malcolm, that we did a good job on that scene. And that was high praise indeed. As David said, he never said, well done. He just said, on to the next, you know, which was great. We didn't mind that at all.
And before we talk about the reception of the film, do either of you have a favorite quote from the film?
Oh dear.
Well, do you remember lines better than I do? Well, I only had really one speech in terms of a speech, which was to Roundtree, the head prefect, about you give your best teddy bear to Oxfam and all that. And that was such a wonderfully David Sherwin type dialogue, wasn't it? David Sherwin being the writer, who was a dear friend also, and we miss him. He's gone as well. And I wrote Oh Lucky Man with David Sherwin, which was the next one. But no, I think that I don't know. What about you, David? What do you think?
I don't know. What I always remember is that scene where the scene about the worst way to die, and the nail going into the head slowly or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And we, the night before that, the three of us didn't really understand what scene that was what that was all about at all, because it seemed very odd that we were laughing so much at these horrible images. And we went to Lindsay and we said, you know, we don't, and Lindsay immediately said, oh, it's a very badly written scene. It's terrible. Come in tomorrow early and we'll work around it,
right.
We'll improvise around it, and we'll get it ready. And then when they come in, we'll shoot it. And we indeed did that. And we did a lot of work improvising. And then they got ready to shoot. And he said, Stuart Baird, who was the sort of runner who has since directed major movies, but said, Stuart, go and get what I told you. And he came back with a bottle of whiskey. And we were forced to drink quite a lot of whiskey. This was at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And then turn over. And we did the scene. And in fact, we started corpsing. We started laughing far too early. And Lindsay got very cross. And he said, you're meant to be professionals. What are you doing? And we said, well, you've just given us all this. But we shot it. And it wasn't until I saw the film, however many months later, that I realized that we'd actually shot the scene word for word as it had been written.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so this brilliant,
because it's not about the words, it's about what happens in between them. And, you know, it's true that he got us, of course, a little tipsy, so our inhibitions would be relaxed. But, and that was a very, very astute move, because we weren't really professional actors in that sense, or very green professional actors. And so for him to get us, you know, lick it up a bit, it really did help with the giggling, the laughing, and I was uncontrollable laughing at some point. And of course, it works perfectly for the scene. And you know, that's all the director cares about. Could care less about anything else. Does it work for the scene? And of course it did. Yeah.
Very clever.
Amazing. And we've got another question, actually. This one comes from Alexa Bailey, and I think she's referencing Malcolm the Slap in the film. She said, I'm wondering what the audition experience did for your performance when the cameras were rolling, and did you manage to do the scene on the first take?
Oh, I don't know how many takes it took, but with Lindsay, very few. He didn't ever go too many takes. But of course, by this time, I knew that Christine was going to slap me. And I just said to her, look, don't hold back. Just whack me as hard as you can. And let's get rid of this. Because I tried my best not to flinch. And I sort of tried to move my eyes away from her so I wouldn't do that. And it worked pretty well, actually, because she did not hold back. That girl could really smack a good one. So good for her. It was a lot of fun working with her, I must say. It was great.
And so once filming's wrapped, it goes into the editing process. What was next for you both?
Well, I went straight up to, straight back into rep. And I was doing a show in Manchester when the film opened. And I couldn't come down to the premiere because I was doing a show that night. They wouldn't let me down. But Malcolm was amazing, really, because where was that flat you were in the North End Road? And
oh yeah,
and after If
Baron's Court, right next to Christine Keeler.
That's right. Well, he didn't want to accept anything except a movie because this was the chance.
Yeah.
And so he waited and starved in this garage until suddenly Figures on a Landscape came along, didn't it? And which was the second one.
That was a year later. I was holding out not to do crap, basically. But so I said to Lindsay, God, I didn't, you know, and I said, can't you get this damn movie out so people can see it? You have to be patient. We're not there yet. We haven't even done the music yet. And by the way, the Mr. Lubo is quite something. The music of the film is really beautiful. And he got I can't remember his name, Wilkinson, I think.
Mark.
Who was the
Mark Wilkinson.
Mark Wilkinson. That's right. What didn't he work? He was doing music at the National Theatre.
The National, head of music at the National, yeah.
Oh wow. That's right. And he did a beautiful job, absolutely. And but the Mr. Luba, I'd like to say, I listened to at school and mentioned it to David Sherwin and to Lindsay, and they went, "Oh yes, well we'll listen to it." And it became a year later. I'm walking down Oxford Street. The top 10 is outside a record shop. Number 8, Mr. Luba.
Oh wow!
I thought, the power of the movies, amazing.
Well, also, of course, it was true that the great thing is people who say, you know, the film doesn't date very much. Well, part of that is because the music was not the pop music of the 60s, which it could have been. When he presses the jukebox, I mean, it's most unlikely that Miss Aluba should come out, really, but it works incredibly well.
But that's the genius of Lindsay, you know. Of all things that would pop up, would be that. And then the frenzy of it's amazing. That is a great sequence, one of the great sequences. But,
and can you both remember the first time you saw the film and what were your sort of emotions and reactions to it?
Oh, well, the first time I saw it, I think, was in an Odeon in Rains Park or Cheam or somewhere like that. I didn't see it in Manchester or anything, and I may have gone to see it. It was at the Paramount, wasn't it? I think in Lower Regent Street. Yeah. I may have gone to see it there, but I think I sat on an afternoon where there were about 3 or 4 other people in the cinema. But no, it was obviously a very exciting experience because it's very difficult to watch yourself objectively in amongst everybody else. But it brought back all the memories, because, as Malcolm said, it was a year. And one of the reasons was that they couldn't get it distributed. They couldn't get it on until, I think it was, Barbarella wasn't doing very well. And so suddenly someone said, well, we'll put If on. I mean, it might not even have been released because they weren't that interested.
Oh, no, I think it would have been. I think it was, look, you know, it went on. It opened, I think, on the 19th of December in 1968. And it won the Grand Prize at Cannes in May '69. I got a call from Lindsay. I was at my parents' house in Buckingham Palace Road, and he said, "Where are you?" And he said, "Get your father to drive you to the cinema." What was it? The Paramount Cinema, right? In where? Haymarket, wasn't it?
Yeah, Lower Regent Street. Yeah,
Lower Regent Street, or whatever. And so my father, we got in the car and started to drive, and I saw this long line, and it was right past the Odeon. And I went, "What's that? Oh God, there's a huge hit at the Odeon." And I go, "What is that?" I went, "Oh my God, no, the line goes straight past the Odeon. Oh my God, it's going to the cinema where we're at." And of course, Lindsay was standing outside with Michael Medwin, going, "We're a hit, we're a hit."
Oh, wow.
And it was I was really happy for him, actually, because, you know, he was a man of also dark moods and rejection and loneliness. Now, I didn't really know that at the time, but looking back, of course, there were signs. But it meant an awful lot. I think what meant the most to him, though, was winning the Grand Prix at Cannes, because he'd been there as a critic. And when he won it, I've never seen a man so happy. It really meant something to him, and it was a joy to see. You know, I don't think any of us could really give a damn, you know, who cares what a lot of intellectual French critics really think. But the truth is, the truth about that and how we won that award is a detective story in itself, because on the first round of the voting, and by the way, they were all on Sam Spiegel's yacht, all the committee, the jury, and Stanley Donen, who was a great director and did Singing in the Rain, which meant something to me later on. He was the chairman and the president of the jury, and on the first round, If came in fourth. So, but Stanley Donen was a big supporter of the film, and he managed to split the vote, the Swedish thing, and with the Russians didn't want anything except from the Eastern Bloc. It was all this political nonsense. But it was between us and this wonderful Costa Gavras movie, Z, or Z, as they call it here, which is a great film too. And so either of those films, If, Z, could have won it, and we got it on the vote of Stanley Donen. So that when Lindsay found that out, he said, "Well, we're going to dinner with Stanley Donen, Malcolm, and I want you to know how much of a friend Stanley is to us. So you'll always be nice about Stanley." And went, "Absolutely."
And what was that like for you both? I mean, you say it didn't mean as much to you both as it did to Lindsay, but
No.
How did it feel for you both to win the Palme d'Or as quite young men early in your careers?
Oh, well, it was very, very exciting. Mind you, I have to say, Richard and I were not invited to go. You see, Malcolm got the ticket. And so the last time I was with Richard, and I remember it so clearly.
Yeah, that was me.
Because we were in Hyde Park, or just overlooking Hyde Park, and it was the day when the Rolling Stones did their famous concert, and we could hear from the window of the concert. And but that was when we expressed a certain amount of being miffed at the fact that we hadn't been invited to. But of course, the reason we were miffed was because we won the damn thing. I mean, and it would have been exciting. But no.
Well, to be honest, it wasn't Lindsay's fault that you didn't get invited. It was that Paramount was so mean with the budget. It was tiny. I mean, I think I slept basically in a garret somewhere that I had to share. I don't even know. That Lindsay said, if you want to come, that's the best I can do. That was it. It was different the next time, but still. Anyway, I didn't care but the thing about youth is you kind of just take, what do you expect? Of course we won. What do you expect? I mean, I didn't think anything else, was going to happen. But of course it was very naive. But we were like that, weren't we, David?
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, there was a sense of optimism then. I mean, you felt that it was possible to do anything if you really wanted to, if you really tried. And our lives went in different directions because Malcolm carried on. And I carried on acting, but I started writing as well at the same time. But then we converged again about 7 years later when we did Aces High. And that was lovely. We met up again.
That's right, of course. That was a good film.
Well, it was a good
That was a good movie. That was a very good film. Actually.
Yeah, well, ITV4 repeated endlessly as far as I can tell. But they leave out my death. When I am burnt alive in the plane. Yeah, they cut it out.
Oh, yeah.
It out in the afternoons. But no, but that was lovely. We came together again. Well, by that time, Malcolm had done Clockwork Orange and done a few other things. And then it wasn't, I suppose, long after that. That was in '76. And my writing, particularly for children, had started to do quite well. So by 1979, I had a show which ended up going all over the world, which meant that really I was lured away from the acting. Although I carried on, I still did telly and I still did the odd stage show. But no, this is why it's so nice when occasionally Malcolm and I meet up, because we wouldn't meet up professionally in the normal way.
No. I'd forgotten about Aces High. I've got it on my recorder.
You were rather good in that.
Yeah, it's a good film. It's a very nice film. And I like very much Jack Gold, the director.
He was lovely man. I did another thing for him, a television play called Mad Jack, about Siegfried Sassoon. And I played the best friend. I always used to play the best friend. I never played the main one. Michael Jason was the main one. But Jack was, he was a lovely, lovely man. Yes, we've lost him too.
Jack, yes. Not Michael though, right?
No, Michael's still, he's still around, well into his 80s.
I love that, man. I shared a house with he and his wife at Stratford. And they let me rent a room, But Jason and I have had so many laughs, so many really naughty things happened. But I digress. Let's stick with If.
Yeah.
Well, just speaking about If, and here we are, say 52 years later, talking about it. Why do you think this film remains so popular throughout the years?
Because it's a timeless movie about timeless subjects. It's about oppression. It's about the establishment oppressing the rest, and cliques, and about all that thing. It's not changed at all. It's exactly as it was. May not be the class system, quite the same, but it basically is the same. It's the same feelings, and so this film, it sets itself apart because it's also very poetic. It has the wonderful kind of feeling of a Buñuel film, as well as just, it's not a conventional story like Tom Brown's School Days, Even though at the beginning of the film, you follow this young boy coming to school and it's his first time, and you think, it's going to be, an awakening, and follow him and how he's bullied and blah, blah. And then suddenly, boom, he disappears, and it becomes, so it's a real that is a real, by the way, for anybody writing scripts or something, that's a very brave thing to do. And, so it has this amazing quality to it of sort of poetry. And where the film changes for me is when, in the sword fighting sequence in the squash court, Mick is cut, lifts his hand up and says, "Blood, real blood." And that's the beginning of the revolution. It all turns. And then they're on the motorbike, and just being on that motorbike is a sense of great freedom, which is a false dawn, of course, but this great sense of freedom. And actually, that was the very first image that Lindsay explained to me, was being on the bike with Christine, with our arms akimbo, traveling on this bike, standing up. That's an amazing shot, actually. It's a very beautiful image. So that is very poetic. And it's not realistic. It's real, of course. And the whole thing at the end of the shootings, and of course it's in their imagination, because, it's also a sort of fantasy sequence. I mean, of course it's real. You see the guns going off and the shootings, but it's all in their imagination, because when you cut back, there's nobody lying there dead. I mean, so it's not a sort of inciting kind of film, a la Columbine. It's not about that. It's about freedom of human expression, and so that, and it's made by a very great artist. Lindsay was a very great artist. I mean, he's one of the great directors, that's ever been in world cinema. Even though he only made 6 films or whatever it is, they're amazing pieces of work. And, he was an amazing man, as David and all the actors that worked for him. I only met one actor that didn't like him, Vincent Price. I went, "Vinny, you don't like Linz?" He went, "No, not much, no." I went, "Why?" He goes, "Because I've learned that fucking part, darling, and now he wants to cut it all." I went, "Well, that's not, well, why? I mean, maybe it's just too much dialogue, He said, "I don't care. I've learnt it. I worked really hard on it." And he kept cutting great swaths of it in Wales of August. Yeah, well, there you are. But he was, he is one of the treasures of English cinema. And he can really be held up against any great world director from anywhere, from the United States or from Italy, wherever it is. Bergman, Fellini, John Ford, Lindsay's up there with them for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's true, and there's this extraordinary combination of fantasy, surreal, real. You don't know quite where you are. There's the black and white and the color and so on, which people always ask about. And it wasn't just because they were running out of money, but I think he thought it would be interesting, and that if something looked better in black and white, then he did it in black and white. But there were so many rather beautiful scenes. I mean, it wasn't as though he was attacking the public school system mercilessly. Those rather nostalgic views of the college, Cheltenham as it was, and the inside of a changing room with a chair and a pair of shorts or something. Very nostalgic and really rather poetic, as Malcolm said.
Only a man who loved his school could have made that film.
Yeah, I think that's right.
There's no bitterness about the school per se. And, the headmaster's a very forward-thinking man. And I know that those speeches were cribbed word by word by David Sherwin from the headmaster's conference or something. And I went, "Where'd you get these?" He went, "Oh, I cribbed them." I cribbed them word by word, word for word, about technology and this and that. I mean, you know, and of course it's all prophetic actually. But there's just wonderful things when, you know, the headmaster is telling the prefect and they're walking through the school. There's the most wonderful shot of a man with one of those white line markers, you know, and he's leaning on the chapel wall and they walk. The camera doesn't move. They just walk into frame like this and then straight through the frame. And it's the most beautiful shot. And I remember thinking, that's my favorite shot in the film. I love it.
Yeah, and, no, it's a lot. And the, of course, the beating scene, the build up to it was an incredibly brave thing to do. It's one of the longest shots. I think it must be in cinema. I don't know how many minutes it is. And it's
well, not anymore, David. You know, they don't use film anymore.
They don't. Yes, all right.
No, they can go on for 45 minutes now.
Oh, well, I'm out of date, aren't I? But I think
you are a bit.
It must have been quite something. And the way he set that up with Richard and I going in, and Roundtree, Robert was actually beating a mattress or something, but it was all timed for real. And then we came out, and of course when Malcolm goes in and swings open the door and then you're inside, I thought that was so clever and simple too, really, because the camera didn't move.
No,
it was great. We only shot that a couple of times, I think.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. No, it's perfect.
It's still voted, you know, one of the best British films ever made, and I think it will continue to be voted that. We have just a couple more questions from the audience.
Oh yes, let's not forget the audience.
This one's from Patrick. He says, Malcolm, was there anything in Mick Travis that you brought to Alex in A Clockwork Orange?
Only my face. Myself being, no, they're so different. You know, Alex in Clockwork is a sort of an immoral rogue. Mick is a pure revolutionary, a man who does things out of purity and without an edge, without, you know, another meaning. But Alex is rather arch, and everything is sort of kind of planned and stuff, you know, in his mind. So, I mean, they're very, very different parts. Unfortunately, it's hard because of, you know, the way one looks, so that people tend to think if you don't really look, you know, hard, then of course they're similar, you know, but they're not at all. And also very different style of acting, you know. Kubrick's style is one of almost cartoon, but it isn't, it's real, but certainly not realism, you know, in that sense. But, you know, I remember just taking scenes and pushing them as far as I possibly could without, you know, breaking it down and being ridiculous. And that was a lot of fun, but a whole different thing. And working with Stanley was so different from working with Lindsay. Lindsay is a nurturer. He wanted to talk about the character. And he'd always, when he'd start talking about character to me, my eyes would glaze over. Because I don't work that way, you know. I don't care what the parents had for breakfast, you know, whatever. But and Kubrick certainly doesn't care about that. Could barely really care about continuity, to be honest. But Lindsay was, he'd say, now I really want you to concentrate on what I'm saying. I want you to listen to this. And he'd go, no, listen. And he'd explain it. And I'd go, well, that's just, you're telling me things that are completely obvious. And in any case, what do I care what they, you know, who his mother and father was? It doesn't help me in the scene. I mean, look, the scene is the scene. I've got to do this and that and the other. And I think that was more on Oh Lucky Man, when we were more on an equal footing. I mean, we were very much, just young actors on here. But I still think, and he actually said to me when we won the Grand Prix, he put his arm around me and said, "Well, now, Malcolm, this is probably going to be the highlight of your career, because everything else is going to be a downward step." And I went, "Oh, really? You really think so?" I went, "I think it's going to be the first step." And he goes, "We will see." But that was just his sense of humor, and yeah, great. And so, no, they're not really the same, the characters, to go back to the question, but I hope that answers it. Is it Patrick who answered?
Yes, it was Patrick. It was Patrick who asked that. And then we've got a final question from Linda. Right. Oh, hey, Sam.
Hi, guys.
How you doing? You all right?
It's we're running over, but it's great stuff. Keep going.
Nice. I was just going to say,
how are you?
Very good, very good. Thanks for joining us this evening.
You bet.
Linda has a question for you both. She says, if you could have your time again, what might you do differently? if anything.
No, I don't think you can think like that, really. No, I think I've been very lucky. I've done an awful lot of different things. No, I've got no complaints, really.
Amazing.
You wouldn't want to be a world-famous surgeon or something?
Not today.
No.
Well,
it's a question of no regrets. Both of us have had charmed lives, got great children. I mean, that's really, we're charmed. We're very lucky, and we know it.
I was just about to say, you've both gone on to be extremely well-known and successful artists in your own arts. What would you put that down to?
Luck.
Yeah, an awful lot of luck, and a certain amount of hard work as well, and of determination. I mean, for me, the children's theatre tack that I went on was crazy, really, because nobody was interested in children's theatre when I started. That's an over-exaggeration, but it was very hard to get interest in major theatres to take a play specifically for children. And now, however many years later, it's very different. And theatres, I mean, the sad thing is that theatres can't do anything at the moment, but on the whole, theatres make work for children an integral part of the planning. And that, I feel, if I've achieved anything, I've helped towards that. And I'm still at it. I mean, The Tiger Who Came to Tea, which is my long runner, which has been going for 12 years, and was nipped in the bud in Huddersfield when the lockdown, well, not the lockdown, when Boris suddenly said, "Don't go to the theatre" to people. And that's a Judith Kerr. Yes, novel, right? Is that, and she's Barnes as well, I think. She's very much Barnes, and all the drawings in there were Barnes. I remember reading that as a kid. Well, you've probably seen the pillar box with Judith Kerr illustrations and so on. No, Jackie, my wife, and I were very great friends of hers in the end, because it was in 2008 that the play happened, and obviously I worked with her on writing the play, and so we used to go and visit her.
Which wife was this?
Which what?
Which wife was this, if I may ask?
Oh,
because I like to keep up what's going on.
Well, yes, my first wife was only my wife.
No, it isn't. You were the only one that was married. You were the. Wait a minute. You were the only one who was married.
I was.
If. And we all went, my God, he's married.
People were surprised, weren't they? We were 24, Fred.
We were horrified.
Yes. Well,
but also slightly jealous.
It didn't last very long, sadly, but there we are. But I've been very happily married to the second wife for many, many years, 40, 45 years or something.
Well done.
So there you are. No, and as Malcolm says, with two lovely children as well. We've been very lucky, both of us, haven't we, Malcolm?
Yeah.
Well, I do have to say thank you so much for participating and supporting the Barnes Film Festival. we pride ourselves on supporting emerging filmmakers and artists. So I was wondering, what one piece of advice would you give to people who are going into the industry?
Well,
never give up on your dreams, and always believe your intuition about something, and don't be talked out of it. If you have an idea that you believe is good, then it's good, and nobody else can know it or take it away from you, and just do it. That's it. Of course, you'll never work, but
you've got to be very determined, and you've got to not listen when people say you can't do it, because hopefully you can. And if you just give up at the first thing, well, you actually don't want it very much.
Well, yeah, amazing pieces of advice. And guys, thank you so much for joining us for the Barnes Film Festival. I've had such a pleasure hosting this Q&A, and I've learned so much. And actually, before we go, David, I know that you have your book, Filming If. Yes.
There it is.
Thank you so much for sending it over to me, and I've had a great time reading it, and all the photos are amazing in that. And of course, Malcolm, you wrote the foreword for it.
I did, but I can't believe he's flogging his book. Blatantly flogging his book on this Zoom thing.
You can get it on Amazon.
Unbelievable. Things obviously don't change.
Special deal on Amazon.
There you go.
Good for you.
Well,
it's a very good read, though. So
we've got someone watching who Patrick. He said he's already read it. So there you go.
Oh,
great.
Big fans there. But yes, again, thank you both so much for tuning in, and thank you, Malcolm, for dialing in from California, and David from Wimbledon. It's a shame we can't all be in person, but it was lovely to meet you both over Zoom, and I'm sure everyone's had such a great time. And yeah, that wraps up the whole of the Barnes Film Festival for the year. So this will be shown as a replay on the website, and so will all the other Q&As. So for those watching, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for your questions. And again, David and Malcolm, thank you so much, and hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay, pleasure. Bye-bye. Nice to see you.
Bye. See you.